Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle and this is my Cloak and Dagger Christmas Week 3 wrap-up. Now I'm filming this video when I can, so if you hear noises in the background, that's just my father-in-law snow blowing outside. But we'll just make do, right? So I have a couple books to show you for Cloak and Dagger Christmas, but I also have a few that are not necessarily Cloak and Dagger Christmas, but they are mysteries, and so I wanted to include them in this video as well. So let's just dive right into it. For the prompt of the study, I read Murder in the Queen's Arms by Aaron J. Elkins. This is one of his Gideon Oliver series. This was published in 1985. Gideon Oliver is a physical anthropologist, and in this book he is in England with his new wife on their honeymoon, and he decides to go and visit a friend of his at a dig, and then stuff ensues from there. And this was quite enjoyable. It was a good mystery. The author is himself a physical anthropologist, and you can tell because he uses big words, he uses the correct words for bones and stuff like that. And he also writes, I would say, a more realistic archaeological dig than you might read about in other books. For example, when Gideon goes to visit his friend for the first time at the dig, he's allowed in at the gate because there's someone there that keeping people off the dig. And while he's there, there's also a group of school children who are there at the dig, and they are bored out of their skulls because nothing's happening. And when the students who are in one of the trenches find something, it's like a little piece, a shard of pottery or something like that, and the kids are bored to tears. So I thought that was good. Yeah, it was a good mystery. You know, there's stuff's going on, and then one of the members of that dig goes missing and is later found dead. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I would read more from this series. It was very entertaining. And then for the prompt of the haul, I had to work hard for this one. I had 3 possibilities from my original TBR, and all 3 of them were no-goes for me. The first one, the bone jar, was just not what I felt like reading at the time. It was maybe a little more intense than I wanted. There was some language and stuff. It was just not what I was in the mood for at the time. So I might try that one again later. The other 2 were just, again, not what I was looking for. The writing style didn't grab me right off the hop, and so I had to look through what I had out from the library for a new author or a new series. And I found The Unexpected Inheritance of Inspector Chopra by Vaseem Khan. Now, this is a new author and a new series for me. I've never read anything by this author, and this is the first in a series, and I loved it. It was great. So it's set in Mumbai, modern day Mumbai. The book was published in 2015, and it really did feel in a lot of ways like the Indian version of the #1 Ladies Detective Agency, which is set in Botswana. It felt very much like that. Inspector Chopra is a man who loves India, and he loves his city, and that is very evident in the story. The book opens on his very last day of work. He's had to take early retirement, but that day is also noteworthy because he also inherits a baby elephant. And so it was just a great story. There was a lot of like pausing for thought and meanderings, which also felt very much like the #1 Ladies Detective Agency. But it was also just a really good story. So the very last day that he is an inspector in the police, he finds out about the case of a boy, like 18, 19 years old, I think, who was found dead, but he's poor from one of the slums, and people are just not interested at all. But it catches the attention of Inspector Chopra, and he ends up investigating the case, even though he is no longer a policeman. And there is one scene where he has his baby elephant with him because he had taken him to the vet, and so First of all, just imagining Inspector Chopra and this baby elephant wandering through the streets of Mumbai was very entertaining. But then he sees someone that he wants to follow, that he wants to find out more information about. So he ends up tailing a suspect with his baby elephant following along behind him, which was just so entertaining. It was the best. And when the guy went into a mall, I guess a massive mall complex, and he follows him in and he takes the elephant into the mall with him, and it was just like, oh my goodness, it was just awesome. Anyway, I really, really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed the character of Inspector Chopra. I love the fact that he is a traditional man. He is a man, an honest man, and a man who believes in justice for everybody, no matter the consequences to the person who is seeking that justice. And I really enjoyed that, and I'm very much looking forward to reading more in this series. So here's my updated bingo chart. I have reached the level of police detective. Very exciting. I only have 2 more books to read in order to fulfill all 9 of the prompts and reach Sherlock Holmes level, so I'm really excited about that. I've really, really enjoyed Cloak and Dagger Christmas. I've been so in the mood just to read tons of mysteries. I've actually put aside all other books, historical fictions, classics, everything, to focus on just on mysteries this month, and it's been really, really fun. So I have a few more here that I wanted to tell you about. I read the latest in Jane Casey's Maeve Kerrigan series. This is called The Cutting Place. This just came out this year. I really like this series. Maeve Kerrigan is a detective sergeant on a murder investigation team in London, and she's a great character. She's really good at her job. She comes from a good family, parents who love her. She's, you know, like, she's well adjusted, all of that. But she, you know, she's had, you know, some hiccups along the way with boyfriends and stuff like that. But basically she's, you know, she's not one of these tortured detectives. She's good at her job. And she's a great partner, Detective Inspector Josh Derwent, who is very arrogant and very annoying, but also a really good detective. And his relationship, him and Maeve's relationship is, I think, the best thing about this series. I love it so much. And so in this book, it opens with her and Josh on the banks of the Thames. A modern day mudlarker has found a hand. And so the first thing that they need to do is, well, obviously they want to try and find more pieces of this poor person's body, but they also need to try and identify this person. And so one of the possibilities, a really good possibility, is a journalist who has gone missing. And this journalist has been looking into a club, a gentleman's club called the Chiron Club, and it's a club for a men-only club. And this journalist is convinced that stuff's been going on there. So once again, it was just a really good story, a great mystery, really great stuff between Josh and Maeve, and some good kind of subplots as well. And I really enjoyed it, and I can't recommend this series enough. If you're looking for a good police procedural with great characters that you really come to care about, I can highly recommend this series. And then I read the second in the Bruno Chief of Police series by Martin Walker. This is called The Dark Vineyard. This is a series set in the Dordogne region of France, in a little town called Saint Denis. And Bruno is the chief of police. Now, there's a lot about how the police forces work and how the communities work in France that I don't fully understand, but he's the chief of police for that town. And then there's also gendarmes, and then another group from another level of police that would come in to investigate when necessary. But anyway, first up, there's a big fire that he has to go and investigate because it turns out to have been arson. And then there's some deaths. There's a lot about wine and the growing of grapes and making of wine in this book. I just really enjoy this series. I like the character of Chief Bruno, and how much he loves his community and will do anything to protect the people in his community. I love how much is talked about food and wine and, you know, how it's made and how much it can be enjoyed, and the fellowship of eating together and all of that. So again, this is a good series, and I'm looking forward to continuing the series next year. And then I wanted to read a Christmassy book, and so I read Kissing Christmas Goodbye by M.C. Beaton. This is one of her Agatha Raisin series. This is just a really fun, cozy series. It's set in the Cotswolds in England, and Agatha Raisin at this point in the series has her own detective agency. And this one, although it's called Kissing Christmas Goodbye, it's not actually Christmas until the very end of the book. The book opens in October, late October, early November, I think, and most of the events take place then. But Agatha spends a lot of time talking about how she really wants the perfect Christmas this year and preparing for Christmas. And of course, you know what's going to happen, right? Christmases are never perfect. They're never what you expect. I don't know if it's ever possible to have a traditional Christmas, a traditional perfect Christmas, right? But again, this is just a really fun series that I really enjoy reading. And I read Mark of the Lion by Suzanne Arruda. This is a reread for me, but I read this like 5 years ago maybe. Possibly even longer than that. This is a historical mystery series set in 1919, primarily in Africa, in Kenya. The main character is Jade Del Cameron. She's an American who she didn't fight. She drove ambulances in France during World War I. She was with a French unit, and she drove ambulances, and she met a British RAF pilot, and he ends up dying, and his last request before he dies is that she find his brother, and she didn't even know he had a brother, and this brother is in Africa, so she agrees to take on this last request to try and find his brother, and so she ends up in Kenya. This is it was a really great mystery. It was a good mystery. Her search for the brother, the people that she meets. I love the descriptions of that area, were really entertaining and evocative, and I'm really looking forward to continuing rereading this series in the new year as well. And then I also read another book in the Create Your Own Holiday Adventure Readathon, and I read A Holiday for Murder by Agatha Christie, and this was to fulfill the prompt of a book with white on the cover. This worked out great because this was the next book up anyway in my Agatha Christie read-through project. So I'm not going to talk very much about this book because I've got a video coming up very soon with the next 3 Agatha Christie books that I have read. So I'll save the majority of it for that, but there was a really hilarious section in here that I wanted to read where Poirot is talking to Colonel Johnson about Christmas. And Poirot says, "It is then your opinion that Christmas time is an unlikely season for crime?" "That's what I said." "Why?" "Why?" Johnson was thrown slightly out of his stride. "Well, as I've just said, season of good cheer and all that." Hercule Poirot murmured, "The British, they are so sentimental." Johnson said stoutly, "What if we are? What if we do like the old ways, the old traditional festivities? What's the harm?" "There is no harm. It is all most charming. But let us for a moment examine facts. You have said that Christmas is a season of good cheer. That means, does it not, a lot of eating and drinking? It means, in fact, the overeating. And with the overeating, there comes the indigestion. And with the indigestion, there comes the irritability." I thought it was great. So this conversation actually continues, and Poirot talks about the fact that that you bring families together that have been separated throughout the year, and there's a certain element of strain involved and hypocrisy, and how all of this leads to danger. He says, the result of pretending to be a more amiable, a more forgiving, a more high-minded person than one really is, has sooner or later the effect of causing one to behave as a more disagreeable, a more ruthless, and an altogether more unpleasant person than is actually the case. If you dam the stream of natural behavior, mon ami, sooner or later the dam bursts and a cataclysm occurs. So this was a great Agatha Christie. I really enjoyed it, and I will talk more about it in my Agatha Christie video. So this is what I've been reading for this third week already of Cloak and Dagger Christmas. How is your Cloak and Dagger Christmas going? I would love to chat with you about it in the comment section down below, and I will see you for another video soon. Bye.